Um, I was asked on Twitter today to comment on Joe Biden's decency theme. So I guess Joe Biden is sort of branding his campaign as one based on decency and words of that type. And here's my take on that. Nobody wants decency. Decency is the sort of thing you say in public. It's not anything you care about. If you put a microphone in my face and you put a camera on me and say, Scott, you're going to be on national television. Tell us some things you think are important. I'll look right in the camera and I'll say, I think we need to restore decency in America. And then you turn the camera off and I go home and Christina says, I've never heard you talk about decency before. Is that like one of your top priorities? And I'll say, no. I haven't even thought about that once in my entire life. Not once have I woken up and say, decency would be good. So I'd say that Joe Biden's decency angle doesn't hit any emotional lever. And so it's just sort of dead on arrival. It's the sort of thing you'd say if you just don't want to cause any trouble. Joe, say something that just, it's easy to understand and people will not mock you for it too much because it's just sort of basic, but it won't get anybody excited in any way whatsoever. What would that be? Well, America's got to return to decency. Yeah, right. That's as close to nothing as an opinion could be. And if Joe Biden is serious about returning to decency, you would think he would be speaking out a little bit more about destruction of public property, looting, and violence in general. But I don't hear that. I don't hear him being against decency unless it's directed, of course, at his political rival. Speaking of Joe Biden, there was a little news item. Did you catch it? There was a little small news item yesterday that apparently the smoking gun has been found and that he's one of the key architects of a coup against the legally elected President of the United States, President Trump. Oh yeah, that's a little bit of news. Now, any news like this is subject to reevaluation and finding out it's all wrong 48 hours later, so I remind you of that. But at the moment, it seems that a Peter Strzok memo suggests that Biden was the first one to float the idea of using the Logan Act against wrongly accused General Flynn. Now, it's in the note. Now, does that mean it's true? Well, you can't know that the note accurately represented the actual meeting, so there's always that uncertainty. But you're going to believe it. I mean, if it's on the note, you're going to treat it like it was true. And given that we all understand the Logan Act is transparent bullshit, by the way, I would like to introduce a term today. There are lots of excuses for things and rationales for things that you might call bullshit. But the Logan Act, as a means of getting at General Flynn, might be the bullshitiest thing that anybody ever came up with in the world. There's bullshit, and then there's bullshit, and then there's whatever would be the bullshitiest thing anybody could ever think of or do, and it would be using the thoroughly unconstitutional, hasn't been tested, but it's clearly unconstitutional, Logan Act. The idea that an American citizen, especially one who's in the incoming administration, can't have a conversation with a member of another country. So whoever came up with the idea of the Logan Act as their way at Flynn is clearly the person who kicked off the coup, wouldn't you say? I would say that Biden has been identified now as the co-conspirator with Obama of the coup. Now, will that ever be American history? Let me ask you this. Who writes history? Well, you think history is written by the winners. And that's true in a national sense. You know, if a country beats another country in war, then the winning country gets to write the history. But what about a history that's disputed within the country? It has nothing to do with another country. Do you think history will show that, based on Strzok's note, that we could determine that Obama and Biden conspired to use a transparently bogus, bullshitiest excuse, the Logan Act, which, by the way, there's nobody who thinks that's a real thing in terms of something that should be or could be, something that somebody would go to jail for. And if it's true, and this is also in the handwritten note from Strzok, that Obama said, make sure you use the right people. What's that mean? What's it mean when the president says to a subordinate, make sure you use the right people? Because if he meant use your best people, seems like he would have said that. Can't read his mind. We're deeply involved in mind reading here because it's necessarily important because the intentions of the people are the whole story. If you don't understand their intentions, then you don't understand what happened. Because things either accidentally happened or it was a coup against the United States elected president. Those are big differences. But I can't, my brain cannot conceive of why you would use the phrase, use the right people, when what you meant was use your best people. Do you have to say right people? If you mean use your A team, use your best people? Doesn't really seem like a phrase you'd use, does it? Now again, can't read his mind. Can't read his mind. But the way this will be received is that we have the smoking gun. It seems now completely clear that Obama and Biden used the power of the government to try to take out a political rival. And in this context, taking him out would be literally a coup against the United States. Now, based on what we know today, and again, this could change tomorrow, right? Could change tomorrow. Tomorrow we might find out, oh, he writes notes and he makes stuff up. Maybe we find another Strzok note that is so clearly fake that it makes this one look less credible. Anything can happen, right? So every conclusion is preliminary in today's world. And then it's also revealed that Comey thought the call with Kislyak, Flynn's call with Kislyak, was fine. So given these three data points, Biden suggesting the Logan Act, Comey saying that the phone call was fine, in other words, obviously no crime, and Obama saying use the right people instead of use highly qualified people or the A team or the best team, I would say that if you wrote the history of the United States, it should say that the Obama-Biden administration committed essentially an act of treason under the cover of law. So I would call it an act of treason, but under the cover of law, so not technically, or is treason the right word? Whatever it is when you overthrow the country, your own country. But let me ask you this, do you think the history books will record that? Because I think that's the truth. And let's say it gets confirmed that everything we've heard is actually what happened. The history books will never write that. That will never be your history. And you can watch it in real time because you're alive now. How long will it take for the history of this period to be written? It's sort of being written as you're alive. So you get to watch the history books being written. Now, just to be clear, there will certainly be published books that make the same statements that I just made. But there will be books that don't make that statement or say it's BS or hyperbole. But what will we teach in schools? What will high school kids learn? What will college students learn? Will they learn what I just told you? Nope. Not even a slight chance, in my opinion, that they will learn that.